that we are more likely to see injuries to students, teachers, and staff. Many of the current approaches in our schools are failing the children who may have experienced trauma and or neurodiverse. How can we shift the culture and training to support better approaches, and how can the U.S. Department of Education lead that work?
Thank you for the question and for the work you do. You know, it's really important to look at it in two ways, right? There are technical things we can do, and then there's a value-laden adaptive shift that we have to make in the profession. We must recognize that when those restraint and seclusion events happen, it creates trauma. I recall in my experience as an educator over the last 20 years, having to develop my own capacity for understanding better tools to address this. But it took me feeling that this was unacceptable, that this is not a good strategy when students are dysregulated, or we don't have an environment that's conducive to lessening events like that. So while at the federal level, I'll tell you the Office of Civil Rights and the Office of Special Education is working on new guidance that promotes better practices, I think it's really important that we hit reset on how we're doing business in our districts now. With funding from the American Rescue Plan, you know, the emotional well-being component of it has been elevated by your department. My expectation is that we think carefully about how we're utilizing those funds to build the capacity of our districts, of our schools, to not only provide good professional learning opportunities for our educators, and that includes central office leadership, building leadership, educators, para-educators, so that everybody in the school community has a better understanding of how to create trauma-informed classrooms so that we're not resorting to restraint and seclusion. Unfortunately, in many cases, it looks like it's used as a primary option. We have to change that mindset. And that's why I mentioned the importance of professional learning and creating a culture like what Joe and I tried to do in Connecticut. Create a culture where we look at that as a problem. We look at that as us creating more traumatic experiences. And then I think on the flip side of that, another thing we have to do is be open and honest about the data that shows where we're doing it. And be honest about to whom we're doing it. My guess is that students that require special education and students of color are receiving more of restraint and seclusion than other students. That's unacceptable. So, you know, you talk about being unapologetic, as we talk about being disruptors, how do we provide professional learning on the front side of it, and how are we transparent and honest about the data on the back end of it to say, we have an issue here and this is going to require change. At the Department of Education federally, we're lifting up practices that prevent that. We're lifting up data collection measures that look at this and look at it from different, different demographics. And we're recognizing that this is a moment now in our country's history where trauma is higher than usual, and we cannot go back to the system of March 2020. So we're really pushing leaders at all levels to really invest in trauma-informed approaches that address with the social and emotional well-being of our students, as well as the academic.